So for today's webinar, our main agenda will be the academic progress management. You can also call it, say, the assessments management from the whole setup to the results import in the Meshed RTO manager system. I will first take you through the whole process of how the assessment management in the RTO manager looks like. And then after that, I will also show you how the results for these assessments are entered or are recorded in the Meshed system, and then how it can then be transferred over to the subject or unit results. For a few of the clients who are not managing the assessments or assessment tasks in the RTO Manager platform, this may not be much relevant but for those of you who are recording the assessments in the RTO Manager system and then are using it to allocate final subject outcomes or unit outcomes to the students, you may be able to gain more insights and knowledge on how the overall setup and the process looks like. To get started, the very first on our list will be the assessment task setup. So in this step is to simply set up the assessment tasks according to the subjects that you have in the RTO manager system. For now, in this slide, I have only included the main steps that are to be taken from the interface in order to add the assessment tasks. I will go over all the steps necessary in the slides for the first few minutes of this webinar. After the slides, I will log into one of our test sites and then we can go through on one of our test sites on how the setup to the whole process looks like, which may be more friendly. So here, as you can see under compliance, if you extend the drop down under compliance, you'll be able to see the second option, which will say academic progress. Now, this particular option is where the assessment setup to the final gradings can be done.
I just submit the resignation letter.
Oh, okay.
I got that job.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay.
I got
this stuff?
I'm sorry, I will be muting. I'll be muting all the
Student service.
participants for the webinar.
Bank style. So with that one, so it just
So in this first step, as you can see, you can make the relevant subject selection under which you would like to add the assessments. Once you select the subject, you'll be able to see a drop down that will give you a drop for the type of assessment, which may be, for example, an online test or an actual written assessment that you would like the students to complete. Followed up after that will be the assessment name, and the description section will be where you will be able to add the relevant assessment details. Once that is done, the last bit of configuration will be the assessment release date and then the due date. So this one, you can either set it up from this page where the system will give you options on a particular number of days from the class start date for the assessment release date, and then for the due date, from the previous assessment release date that you set up, you'll be able to configure, for example, X number of days after the release date. If, however, you do not want to set it up from this particular section here, there will also be another option to set the release date and due date in the next step of this setup. Okay, so once you add the assessments with all the relevant details, the assessment will then show up in a grid below. As you can see, the task for subject ABC or task for subject XYZ based on the selection of the subject in the dropdown. Followed up after this setup, will be the assessment task entry. In this particular step, you'll be able to map those assessments that you added under the setup assessment task page, those ones you'll be able to link to a batch or the class that you may enroll to the students. Now, say one subject may have batch A, batch B, and batch C. Now, if each of those batches will have different assessments that the students may be required to complete, then you can configure those here. However, if the assessment will look similar for all those batches, it will just be based on the subject, then that is also configurable from the same page. As you can see from this screenshot, the tasks available to assign to subject. So any tasks that you have added to that particular subject under setup assessment task, now those ones will appear here. If, however, one of those assessment tasks have already been linked to the selected batch, then it will appear in the second grid below where it says assessment list for semester, term, class, and batch, so on and so forth. So this is the second part of the setup that you'll be required to do. Once this setup is done, the next portion will be results entry. Sorry about that, guys. Let's continue with the webinar in that case. So once this setup is done, the students who are enrolled in that particular subject and the batch will be able to, you'll be able to see in the list once the relevant course, year, semester, so on and so forth have been selected. So the outcomes for these assessments, you can either mark them individually from each student's subject enrollment or each student's results page. Alternatively, if it's something that you would like to do or in bulk, or say, for example, all the students who are enrolled into a particular subject or batch, if you would like to grade all those assessments in one go, then you may use this task results entry page. Next up will be, so another piece of information here is when you are entering the subject results, you'll be able to see few icon or few action icons at the very bottom of the page. So I'll try to give you a slight overview of what each of these actions are there for, or what the functions of these action icons are. So update and save is you can use this icon to save the assessment mark or the outcome that you have added for the selected student records. The second icon, which is lock assessment. So this is used if you have if there is no further amendments or no further updates to be made to the mark or the assessment outcomes that you have entered for the selected students. Now, any other user who comes in or who looks at this page will not be able to update the marks or outcome unless the assessment or unless the record is unlocked. So that is what the third action icon will be for. Followed up after that will be the option to approve assessments. Now, ideally, only the academic manager or say the director of studies will have the access to approve assessment. However, if you would like to allocate this particular permission to some of the other users as well, then it is also configurable via permission setup in the system. Followed up after that will be transfer results and also the other option, which is transfer results by unit. Now, based on whether you would like to finalize the result based on assessments either for units or for the whole subject in a whole, will be you'll be able to use one of these options. So based on the assessment outcomes that you have recorded, you can straight away finalize the subject outcomes using one of these two options here. So this is just a brief overview of what the options on the two pages, transfer results and transfer results by units, will look like. Only a slight difference there will be in transfer results and transfer results by units page. I can show you once I am logged into one of the sites for further information. Now on this page, setup assessment task. As you can see, subject ID, subject drop down, so on and so forth. Now, for example, if I select one of the subjects here, for example, this one, you can see two assessment tasks have been currently set up here, assessment task 1 and assessment task 2. If there are any other assessments to be configured, you can enter the assessment name here and then the assessment description over here. So these ones are mandatory fields that you will absolutely need to record in order to add the assessment tasks. All of the other ones will be not mandatory, but something you can still configure or add the information for if it is required. Now this allows student to upload assessment task is applicable or would be useful if you would like the students from the student portal to be able to upload the assessments at their end. Now, if the students have uploaded the assessment, for example, a file or any document that you would like to have the students upload, then you'll be able to see it from the staff portal as well. The second step, which is the task entry. So on this page, as I said, you'll be able to link the assessment tasks that you have set up with the badges that are added under that particular subject. Now this page or the setup will look a bit different for subjects that have either marks grading or competency grading. For example, for this particular subject that I have selected from the drop-down, which is business networking, now for this subject, marks grading has been set up, which means you'll be able to allocate marks for the assessment as well as the pass marks that the student will be required, that the students will be required in order to pass the assessment. Now, for example, for this marks, which is the full marks for the assessment 100, pass marks 50, and then the
Sorry
weightage.
again. I can only see the blank desktop here. I'm not sure if you are sharing something. It's probably like the wrong screen again.
Oh, sorry about that. Is it visible now? I believe this should be visible now. So as I was saying, on the task entry page, you'll be able to see the page something like this, which is marks, pass marks, and the weightage of the assessment. And if you'd like this assessment to be used for the final outcome calculation, then these options you're able to tick or untick based on the requirement. Now, as I said previously, in the setup assessment task page, you are able to configure the release date and due date. However, if you do not configure it in this page, then you can also make any amendments or add the relevant dates from this page. For example, for this particular assessment, release date and due date has been set up something like this. Now, if you'd like to make any edits to one of these fields or any other fields for that matter in this particular record, then you can simply click on edit the selected subject task assessment details, and then the page should look something like this. So here you can configure the release date, you can configure the due date, total marks, pass marks, final outcome, so on and so forth. For a different subject for which instead of marks grading, the grading type is competency grading, then two of the options that you could previously see, which is the marks and then the pass marks for the assessment, those ones you will not be able to see. So for this one, you will simply be able to mark either the assessment pass, fail based on the setup that has been done for the competency grading. Now, followed up after that is the task results entry. Now, here in this page, for example, if I select that same subject from the drop down and that relevant batch, you'll be able to see student records, something like this. Now, for example, if two of the students have been enrolled in this selected subject and then this selected batch, then you'll be able to see the students like this. Now, the system will only allow you to enter the outcome or edit the outcome for the assessments if the student status is current student. If the student status is anything other than current student, for example, enrolled or finished, or say any other status at all in the system, then that student will be highlighted in red. And then you will not be able to add competency for that assessment for that student. So the color coding will help you determine whether or not you're able to add or modify the outcomes for the students. For example, this particular student, the assessment has already been logged and approved. Now, you can save, log, unlog, approve assessment, and then if you'd like to reset, then you will have to follow the pattern, unlock assessment, and then reset the results. For this same assessment, however, you can also mark the results individually from the student results page. Let me quickly open one of the students here, which will be this one. Now, if I go to the results page for this student, then I'll be able to see the two subjects that the student has been enrolled in along with the unit enrollment. Now, if I go to this particular option, which will be ideally the fourth action icon, you will be able to see against that subject. If I go here, you'll be able to see the assessment tasks, something like this. Now, for example, if a student has submitted their assignment late, or if you are grading the assessment again based on a student's request, then you will also be able to change the competency from here, add comments, approve, so on and so forth. Now going back to the same task results entry page, once the results have been finalized for the students from this page and then it has been locked and approved, you go to transfer results page. Now if I select that same student, sorry, that same semester, subject and batch from the drop down, then the student you were able to see in the previous page, you will also be able to see here. For example, for this student, now that the outcomes for the assessments have already been finalized, which you can also see from this icon over here, view task assessment result of the selected student. Now, if you click on this, it will open a small new pop-up which will show you the unit assessment task and then the outcome that you have previously recorded. Now you can quickly review, and if everything looks good, then you can tick the student from using the checkbox here, and then you can transfer result. Now for me, because this is only test data and I only have one student available, there is only one checkbox here. However, if there are multiple students for whom the assessment results are to be transferred into subject outcomes, then you'll have multiple checkboxes here. So the only difference between these two checkboxes will be this one will be used for individual students. You can tick and untick, and then this one will be for the overall the students that are appearing on the list. So once you have this, you can check and then you can transfer results. Now how this works is, for example, for this particular student and then this particular subject, which is business environment, say for example here, so the business environment subject currently has no outcome, right? So the students enrollment detail is only enrolled. Now once you transfer result, for example, I check this student and then transfer result, it will give you a confirmation results have been updated successfully. Once the results have been updated, the student will be highlighted in green, something like this. Now, if you go back to the student results page for that same student, you'll see that this has been updated and the competency has now been changed to C based on the assessment outcomes. So using this whole process, you'll be able to better manage the assessment tasks, and based on the assessment tasks, you can add and update the subject or unit outcomes as well. If your subjects in the RTOManager platform have multiple units added under them, for example, a whole cluster of units under a particular subject, then instead of using the transfer results page, you can use the transfer results by unit. For example, under subject A, you have unit ABC and you would only like to update the results for unit A. Then you will be able to use this option to here, for example, something like this. So all the units that are linked to this particular subject selected from the drop down, you'll be able to see here. And then if the result is to be transferred only for one of these units, then you'll be able to tick and untick and then transfer the results accordingly. Now, Elico's bulk results entry is also works in a similar way, but this one will be for Elico's courses where the assessments are set up a bit differently to the VET assessments, to the VET courses assessments. So these are the listening, reading, speaking, and writing that you will be grading the students upon. However, you can same for here also. For example, mark 10 or outcome A, you'll be able to add here, add comments if required, and then save and update the assessments as well. So this is how the whole process from setup to the results entry looks like. Since we have almost reached the end of the session and we do not have any additional time left, if you have any questions or concerns, you can add them in the chat and then we'll be able to get back to you after the session. You can also check the webinar again once it's uploaded in our YouTube channel. Apart from this webinar, if you feel you have any doubts or if you need assistance regarding other sections of the system, for example, the study or the calendar setup or course promotions, anything at all, then you will likely be able to find relevant webinars in our channel as well. So feel free to have a look for those ones as well. Thank you all so much for your time today. And sorry about the glitch in between. I was not aware that I was sharing the wrong screen. Thank you all so much for joining the webinar today. I hope to see you in our upcoming webinars as well. Hope you all have a wonderful weekend. Thank you.